Hi, welcome back to the Sandy Trail. We are on episode 6 of season 1. We made it this far. I know we would get there, but it's been a bit of a slow release of doing these episode reviews, but I'm so excited to talk about this episode. I honestly don't remember like the first half of episode 6, and watching it back I'm like, oh my gosh, like all the little details and important dialogues between Sydney and Charlotte. It was fun to look back into this episode, and if you are a sidlotte fan, this episode is a big sidlotte episode, and I'm really excited. And there are other things that happen in this episode besides Charlotte and Sydney. I'm not gonna pull up the scene for those. I would just like drop some stuff that happened in this episode besides the Georgiana situation in London. But we are definitely focusing on every scene of Charlotte and Sydney together, and I think this is really important, especially if my Sandy Trail reviews and leading up to episodes 7 and 8.
Mr. Parker?
Miss Haywood.
If you watched the episode, episode 6, it started off with Charlotte arriving in London. So she is in London trying to find her friend, Georgiana. London is a city, right? And it's a whole different world for Charlotte and where she came from. Like, she from a small town, and Sanditon seemed to be a town like atmosphere, but it's becoming a little bit more advanced, so it's like in between a city and a town. But London, that's a full-scale city, and there are more people, a lot more poor people and strange-looking humans that she really encountered back home. This is a new experience for her, for sure, and she by herself, and this is something that Mary was worried about if she did let Charlotte go off to London by herself. This is not really a good idea for a single woman back in those days doing what she's doing right now. Unfortunately, she got into a little situation herself with this stranger guy, and he started to attempt to kidnap her and harm her, and thankfully Sydney came to the rescue. I thought that was hot how Sydney came to save her without knowing that the woman is Charlotte. And Charlotte was, of course, surprised to see Sydney. The timing of it is like the universe in the show played really well in this, like the timing, and it's just at the right moment, at the right time for Sydney to be there for Charlotte.
As if the situation were not insufferable enough, I now have the added burden of protecting you.
I have no need of your protection. I have the situation in hand.
Excuse me! What do you suppose would have happened had I not arrived at that moment?
Sydney does have the responsibility to protect Charlotte, even though she doesn't want any help and protection from him. She is staying with Mary and Tom for the summer, right? And Charlotte's family is trusting them to take care of her and make sure that she is safe at all times. So if anything happens to Charlotte, like if she gets kidnapped or dies in this episode, her blood will be on the Parker's family. So Sydney knows that it's very important to keep Charlotte safe at all times. And I think another part of that situation is that he cares for her enough to protect her.
What possessed Mary to let you come in the first place? I have no idea.
She doesn't know I'm here. In fact, she expressly forbade it.
You stole away on the London coach regardless.
I left a note explaining that I'd come here to help.
Help? How exactly do you think your presence here would help?
Sydney stopped in his walk and he's like, what? Like, you actually went to London by yourself without Mary's permission. You basically disrespected her and did not obey her command to stay in Sanditon. But he should know by now that Charlotte is very bold and independent, and when something needs to be done, she go for it.
For one thing, I did not think that you had Mr. Molyneux's address.
It's hardly taken me long to find it, as you can see.
It is of no use anyway. He's not been seen in over a week. Apparently he has all but vanished.
Yes, of course he has, with Georgiana. What more proof do you need?
Otis is nowhere to be found. He is MIA, possibly with Georgiana, and that what Sydney is assuming. He really has something against Otis, and he just doesn't see Otis as the best possible future husband for Georgiana. There's something going on, and we will talk more about that later on. Charlotte, she's already in that Nancy Drew mode, trying to get information from the locals and finding Otis. Like, she had that clue, that evidence of Otis' address, but it's not helpful. She really want to help Sydney in this matter.
Massively, Tom is in our London house. He'll see that you're kept out of harm's way.
No. I'm in large part to blame for what has happened. You must allow me the chance to help put it right.
Tom is actually in London. This is one of the things that I wanted to talk about, but not gonna pull up the scene. Tom is giving space to Mary. So Mary is actually in Sanditon with the kids, and Tom left and went to their London house. So they have two homes. Tom is going through that situation that happened at the cricket game, and he's just trying to sort out the situation of getting money and to pay these workers and to hopefully continue the construction, the building of the town's Sanditon while fixing his marriage with Mary. He basically broke the trust in the relationship, and that is not good. So he has two big problems now on his plate. He is definitely struggling, and of course Mary is sad and she's stressed out too, not only about her marriage with Tom, but what Tom is going through with the financial trouble. That stress is on her now, because not only she knows now, husband and wife, when one thing happened to one partner, it affects the other partner too.
Please.
Done enough.
Even though Sydney recognizes the love and support she has for her friend, just to want to be sure that her friend is okay, his number one concern right now is the safety of Charlotte. He cannot lose two girls, so if he knows that Charlotte is safe at Tom Parker house, that's just one less burden, and then he can shift his focus to finding Georgiana.
If you'd been honest with me, if you'd only told me that you feared for her safety,
I
then I
could
would have
not
thought twice.
have been any clearer about my feelings for Mr. Molyneux.
You spoke only in the vaguest of terms. You gave no reason for your antipathy. No explanation.
Oh, so you supplied your own. You baselessly accused me of prejudice.
This is the moment Charlotte is rubbing everything on Sydney. She is letting loose the cannon, and she's like, you know what? I'm gonna be straight up with you. Like, you against color people. I mean, there's no other reason, no explanation of why you like this against Otis. That outspoken personality that she has, she already made that impression, that observation, like, you don't like Otis because he is a black guy. And of course that ticked off Sydney because that's not really his true color. But the big problem here is that Sydney never gave her a clear deep explanation of why he is bitter toward Otis.
Probably baseless, given how you made your fortune.
Oh, for God's sake! I despise slavery. I've long since renounced the sugar trade for that very reason. The man's race played no part in it.
Sydney raised her voice and then he lowered her voice, but he still gave her that eye contact. And when he lowered her voice and told her that he's against racism, he was serious about it. He was serious about saying that and how he is against slavery and the idea of slavery and what it does to Black people. And he's like, I'm totally against it. And that settled the drama a little bit in this moment.
I think of no other reason for your enmity.
Are you really that naive? Why do you think he was so desperate to marry her? Because the moment they're wed, everything she owns belongs to him.
This is just not about color. This is about the intention behind Otis' proposal to Georgiana. And that shows that Sydney is very protective of Georgiana, like a little sister. He takes his responsibility in taking care of her very seriously. Her dad basically gave the command to him, like, hey, take care of my daughter. Like, I trust you. This is like a human being. Like, keep her safe. And that includes the future of Georgiana and who she's gonna settle down with. So Sydney, being the overprotective brother, but in a good way, and he just doesn't believe and trust that Otis is the best soulmate, the best husband for Georgiana. It settled down a little bit even more at the end of that clip. That look on Charlotte's face, she's like, oh, I did not think of that. So it shows that she doesn't really think about Georgiana as a rich, wealthy friend. She more than that. So Charlotte just had that epiphany moment, that realization, like, oh, right, that could be a possibility.
Are we not wasting time? Instead of taking me back to Tom, we could be searching for Georgiana.
Where do you suggest we look, Miss Hayward? This is a city of 1 million people.
She really wanted to be in London and help find Georgiana.
The Sons of Africa.
What?
It's the movement he belongs to. If we can find out where they meet.
Driver!
Nancy Drew mode is back on for Charlotte. She's like, wait, why don't we find Otis at a place that he meets with the public for his movement. So that's very, very smart of Charlotte to remember that and tell Sydney.
I swear, I would sooner die than dishonor her.
Miss Lamb's letter, in which she proposed a tryst at the exact same time and place from where she was taken. A mere coincidence, I suppose.
I never received such a letter.
Do not insult me!
Sam Sidaway said you sent someone to fetch your mail?
No, I did not!
But why should anyone wish to steal your post?
Well, this isn't good. So Otis basically been kept in the dark. He never received the last letter from Georgiana and telling him to meet her up somewhere, and this is not good. And it's random thought though, it reminds me of today's time. You know, I bet you heard it before. There are bad people out there that steal other people's mail, and especially packages that left on the front door porch. So having someone steal your mails and letters, that's not good.
What?
There is a particular gentleman to whom I owe a certain debt.
Which gentleman?
Beecroft.
What is it? Who's Mr. Beecroft?
He owns a gambling house. Come with me.
Sydney already had that impression, like, all the blame is on you. Like, I blame you, Otis, like, for everything that is going on with Georgiana right now. And kind of funny though, like, Charlotte's kind of like the mediator in between these two guys. And thankfully she's there. If not, I think these two guys would have been in a fight.
He has sold her. The villain has sold her.
What?
In return for a promise to buy his debt, she's been handed to some dissolute named Howard. Even now, he'll be dragging her to an altar.
An altar? But that cannot be allowed without your permission.
No. They have no such laws across the border there. They will marry you with impunity.
His character is like flipped upside down. He seemed to be like a really nice guy, a really great boyfriend for Georgiana, but he has some financial trouble to himself. So that's a huge red flag, especially him being a boyfriend to Georgiana.
Had you only allowed us to marry.
You would blame me? It is you that has ruined her! I should avenge her honor right here now!
Stop! Stop. What good will that do?
That was like the first time Oda talked back to Sydney in a rude manner, according to Sydney policy handbook. Sydney definitely took that the hard way, and he pushed Oda against the wall. Sydney had that personality that he's very aggressive, especially when something that is going on that he doesn't like. And he putting all the blame on Oda. Oda didn't even like try to fight him back. He just like trying to protect himself, his life. He's like, I don't want to get hit. I don't want to get killed. But it's a good thing that he didn't try to fight him back, because I think it could have been worse, and I think it wouldn't look good though. A white guy versus a black guy.
I cannot give up. I cannot accept that she is lost to us.
What do you suggest we do? They'll be halfway to Scotland by now.
What if they're not? You said Mr. Beecroft had only received a promise of payment. He doesn't sound like the kind of man that would give her up unless he was already in receipt of the money.
Thankfully, Charlotte, the mediator, she came in between them, and she's like, this not gonna help in finding Georgiana. We are wasting time, and you can see that Charlotte was spoken over to them, specifically to Sydney. Like, it harmed him, and he's like had a moment of second thought. Like, you're right. Like, I should just let all this go, and just don't get him to my head, and shift my focus and continue the search to find Georgiana.
Well, is there not a chance, at least, that he's still holding her? Somewhere in London, even?
Perhaps you're right. Mr. Beecroft owns a boarding house near Drury Lane. Come on.
Nancy Drew, once again, Charlotte came up with a great plan, a great idea, and Sydney was open ears to it. He was being a great listener, fair enough, to let her speak out her ideas. And he's like, you know what do we have to lose? Like, let's try everything that we know and can do.
As I see it, he is a good man who made one terrible mistake.
He is an inveterate gambler. He has several debtors beside Beecroft.
Otis never meant to place Georgiana in harm's way. Any more than I did.
And yet you both did.
To hit the last scene that we will talk about in this video review, there will be 3 parts to episode 6. A bunch of scenes of Sydney and Charlotte together, and I wanted to break it down into 3 parts that would make the most sense, and we get to focus and analyze deeply in each of these 3 parts. And the first part is right now. The second part is the second half of Georgiana search adventure, and the third part is another ball dance that Sydney and Charlotte are going to have, and I'm excited to talk about it when we get there. So this is the last scene for this video, and I want to start off that Sydney has a bigger picture of Georgiana's future, and she's like, wait a minute, Georgiana, like, she's like my little sister. Like, I can be very protective of her for a good reason. Like, Otis has his own financial issue going on. He had debts. He said he's a gambler. So Sydney's thinking, like, okay, so if Georgiana married Otis, right? And Otis bring all these baggages with him, baggage of debts, and Georgiana has a lot of money, and she doesn't have any debts. So if he marries her, she's gonna pay off his debts with her own money. And Sydney like, no, that's not how it's gonna work. That is not how it's gonna end up in my policy book. Sydney like, no, that's your own issue. That's your own baggage. You should deal with that before marrying her.
All I ever cared about was Georgiana's happiness.
What do you think I care about?
It's anyone's guess.
I've done the best I can by Georgiana.
No. At every turn, you have abdicated responsibility. If you truly cared for her welfare, you would have watched over her yourself.
It's a role I neither sought nor asked for.
Of course not.
He did actually, like, put her in, like, a jail cell at Mr. Griffith's house. He does check in on her from time to time, but she doesn't actually live with Sydney in a separate house, just like the two of them. But it's a good reason, like a good planning that she is with other women at Mr. Griffith's house. But he did actually told Mr. Griffith, like, Georgiana, it's all yours. I'm done with her. Like, I trust you. Like, you know, here she is. And it shows that he's getting tired of this responsibility, but he still cares for her. I mean, he is trying to find her right now, and I think that speaks high volume of who he is. He might not show it, his feelings of, you know, caring for Georgiana, but the action that he shows, especially right now, he really cares for the safety of Georgiana.
Because you are determined to remain an outlier. God forbid you give something of yourself.
Please do not presume to know my mind, Miss Haywood.
How can anyone know your mind? You take pains to be unknowable. All I know is that you cannot bear the idea of two people being in love.
So Sydney always believed that Otis never had the true intention, pure intention of marrying Georgiana. Like, he's in for the money, he's in for her money, her fortune. He doesn't care about anything else except for her money. That's how Sydney sees it. She sees the long run. Charlotte, she sees the now. She's like seeing what she knows and what she felt in meeting Otis for the first time. She had this like short history of knowing Otis. Sydney, he knows him more than she does. So Charlotte is thinking of like right now the short run, like they look so in love, like they deserve one another. Sydney like, no, it's not gonna happen. And Charlotte not understanding his perspective, of course it's gonna annoy him, and she's not understanding Charlotte's perspective, because he knows that he is right. He's like, this is not true love.
And what do you know of love? Apart from what you've read.
I would sooner be naive than insensible of feeling.
Is that really what you think of me?
Ooh, that's a deep assumption that Sydney said about Charlotte. Like, okay, like, you don't know anything about love, like, you only know about love in book. Wow, that really, that's like downgrading her wisdom on love. We don't really know if she ever had a boyfriend in the past, you know, or a possible suitor back home.
I'm sorry that you think that. How much easier my life would have been if I were.
Like, he has like this hardcore shell around him, and he doesn't like easily open up to talk about things, and especially very vulnerable things in life. And that's like that hurts Sydney a little bit. He's like taken back from it. Like, what? Like, that how you think of me? And I think that really made him sad, because I think more than anything, I think he believed in love, and of course he wanted to find happiness and love and settle down with the love of his life, whoever she may be. But it's just right now, Charlotte just doesn't see that in him. And I think once he does show that to her, I think it's gonna change everything in the friendship, in the relationship. In Charlotte, that look on her face at the end of the scene, it's just some eye-opening moment for her. She's just like, okay, like he was humble about it, about what I said. He didn't argue. He admitted that, it is true, and that, it is something that he's working on. And I think once he get out of his shell, again, like, it's gonna change things for these two.